in the industry and elsewhere. The media rarely, I think, and I can speak for most of the media, creates a picture of the world to conform to the needs of its clients or clients. So, for instance, I would say that people want two things. They want the truth, but they also want the truth packaged in particular ways. And that provides us with the source of our own raison d'etre, the purpose of our being as people in the media. We want to tell the truth, but we need a balance, right? So I'll give you an example of a show that we have on BFM. It's called the Breakfast Grille. Spelled incorrectly, we add an E to the grill. But the grilling is something that I think a lot of journalists aspire to. This is sort of the pinnacle of journalistic practice. You ask the hard questions and you try to extract some sort of truth from your guests. Now, it makes them uncomfortable, they might be sweating, they might be thinking, why did I even agree to this? And in fact, this becomes a problem for us. In the long run, people are asking themselves, why should I go and get myself grilled, right? Or what is the purpose of this whole thing? If I'm going to be torn to shreds in full view of the public, do I really want to do this? And this is, of course, a dilemma for a lot of media. It's less so if you're such an important platform that people feel, on balance, better to go on than not. So if you're a BBC and you have something like Hard Talk, you feel perhaps that on balance, putting your explanation of the world and justifying your actions is beneficial, even if you get asked the hard questions. That's not always true in a context like Malaysia or even regionally, where corporate leaders, political leaders, people in civil society don't always want scrutiny. Don't always want the kind of scrutiny that the media will bring to any issue. It is a deeply, how would I say, it's a deeply problematic balance that we have to deal with in the media. We want people to come, we want to speak to them, we want to have honest conversations, but the question of where the line between honesty and a puff piece is, where is that line? It's a very difficult one for us to draw, but draw that line we must. And every day we make decisions about how far we can push our guests, how far can we extract the truth without doing injury, turning people off, or shutting the doors permanently to engagement. It is one of those dilemmas for us. But at BFM, I believe that at the bottom line is a firm belief in our country, a firm belief that we do this in order to talk up the country and make the economy vibrant. So as a business station, we both celebrate our leaders, even in industry and sometimes in politics, harder sometimes with the politicians, but nevertheless, it's a faith in this country and the future. And we feel that in aggregate terms, you can do the puff pieces, you can do the highly critical ones. Together, they might create a more adequate picture of the country, the conditions and our situation that makes any kind of assessment of where we are, a place that we are vibrant and worth living in. The next quote I'm going to share with you is about cities, because I think what is clear is that the city, the kind of city it is, has a story to tell, is adequate or matches the kind of events you want to do. So in research on questions of cultural festivals, arts festivals, there is a lot of interest in secondary cities. cities like Penang rather than a city like Kuala Lumpur. And I think the Penang government understood this, and it's understood by many cities around the world, not just in terms of what placemaking will do, but in recognizing that there's the kind of experience somebody wants when they go to a city like Penang, and that Penang can offer, because it will be human in scale, the sense you can capture the city, you can have a sense of where you are in the city because of its scale, that it would be very different from a Kuala Lumpur. But let me just read that quote to you from Convene. Cities like dreams are made of desires and fears. Even if the thread of their discourse is secret, their rules are absurd, their perspectives deceitful, and everything conceals something else. I think the reason I wanted to talk about cities is because the city, at least for the media, is also where it all happens. Of course, Kuala Lumpur is not Malaysia. In fact, in many ways, Kuala Lumpur, even the peninsula, is not Malaysia. And I think, fellow countrymen from Sabah and Sarawak often chaff at the suggestion that it's enough to visit Kuala Lumpur, it's enough to understand the peninsula to understand where this country is. Sarawak is very exciting. It's got an exciting story to tell, as Malaysia and the peninsula had 20, 30 years ago when that structure was put up. I don't know if you all remember the opening of KLCC, the Petronas Towers. It was a story. It was a story we were telling the world in the 90s, a story of progress, of affluence, of a kind of chutzpah. This was, a country that could go places. It was a story of confidence. But is that still true? And I think with the media, you have both an enemy and a friend in telling the story of a place like Kuala Lumpur or any of the other cities where you want to cite your conferences and exhibitions. The infrastructure is obviously one thing, and you know that better than I do, but what is the image of Malaysia today in the world? And how can we recover it from 2 decades of drift, following the Asian financial crisis, the last 5 years of political turmoil? The question is whether stability has come back permanently. I know businessmen want predictability. Predictability is essential to making business decisions, and perhaps in your industry, things have to be booked years in advance, depending on the nature of the conference. So that issue is still there. Has Malaysia turned the corner? How do you feel? Do you think Malaysia as a whole has a story to tell, a pitch to the world that is positive? Do you think the story has moved from the peninsula to the Borneo states? Is Kuching the right place to be today? Is it the exciting city, the shining beacon for the country? I'm not sure. Jane Jacobs, done research on cities, says, cities have the capability of providing something for everybody, only because and only when they're created by everybody. Here, the question of strategic storytelling might come in. How do we tell stories, and what platforms do we use to talk up our cities as places to cite exhibitions and conferences, if that is the main objective? How do we make it real? Because you can sell somebody, like the boy who cried wolf, you can tell people all kinds of stories, but when they come here, they need to feel that that story is real, true. Otherwise, they go back feeling a little disappointed, maybe feeling a little cheated. How do we create cities whose stories we can tell with integrity, with honesty? It's not that easy, but it means that in many ways we need to support each other in the truth-telling without going maybe the way of the, what bleeds leads, but in a way that can, in fact, serve the purposes of all stakeholders. Like I said, when I first thought about speaking here, I did a bit of research on the industry to see whether I had something of value to say to all of you. And I certainly didn't want to bore you, but I'm very grateful that this session is before lunch rather than after lunch, because I know how hard it is to stay awake, even with the most exciting presentation after lunch. So I'm grateful for that. But at the same time, I'm not entirely sure, until you tell me, what is it that you think the media can give to you? How the media can be an ally in the work that you do. Today, because of the crisis in the media, we too have been told that events, live events with people, engaging with other people, must become a revenue stream for us. BFM does have events. We organize some big ones. We just had something called Brand Fest. These are the realities of the media itself. So we understand it. We've in some ways, our business model is converging with your business model. But what is it that an organization like BFM has, or any other media? It's the power to convene. It's the ability to bring the right people together, curating and ideating conversations that are meaningful and resonate, so that when the event is over, people are still talking about it. They will remember this as something significant in that, in their year. They will say, I met really interesting people, and I made connections that lasted and hopefully will last for some time. And that is the power of media that has integrity, the power to convene. And it's something that I've only learned in recent times, focused as I am on the daily grind and my work as a journalist. The power that a media organization has, the charisma that a media organization has, can be a powerful ally, because when we speak, people believe us. And that belief in our storytelling is what matters, because you can hire any number of public relations people, and I'm not putting them down, public relations people to do your storytelling, but they might not have the heft, the integrity, the belief, the trust that an organization like BFM, not just BFM in this country, but an organization like BFM has. I don't know how many of you have children. I don't know how many of you grew up with Charlotte's Web, but okay. Yes, people can be gullible, and you can tell them tales, especially if they come from far. You can tell them tales of an exotic city set in a tropical forest, full of beauty and just the most wonderful fruits. I don't know about you, but I'd never leave Malaysia because of our fruits. It is, but it's a double-edged sword, isn't it? When you start with the premise that people are gullible. The media has a problem, and I won't shy from admitting that. We've had a problem with truth for some time, and the media has been attacked by many politicians who don't like the truths that are told, especially when it affects their rice bowl, as it were. But that's what democracies are. That's what a vibrant society is. It is an ongoing conversation over what is reality and what is the truth. So, I want to end with this, at least with the presentation part of the session, with this. I don't know how many of you watch Emily in Paris. How many of you watch that? Come on, don't be shy. Admit it. It's a bit cringe, but okay. Okay, there you are, all the fans of Emily in Paris. What has Emily in Paris done for Paris? What has the White Lotus done for the many places that television series was located? It drew people in, not because it was the main story, but because it was the background. It was the background, but an interesting one. And I want to suggest that that in many ways, the efforts that I saw in Penang using a literary festival to draw interest in a city and create a buzz around it was, I think, reasonably successful. I'm not sure how to rate it. From my perspective as co-director of the Literary Festival in Georgetown, having people from around the world come, these of course were authors of books and such, people, you know, thought leaders and such, coming to Penang. Their experience of Penang through the Literary Festival, I think, perhaps had as much impact as any number of advertising programs or billboards that were placed, I think, in airports around the world. Come to Penang, come to the Georgetown Literary Festival. I don't know if there's a single fix for the kind of conversation that, or you know, that we might have between the media and the people in your industry, but it's worth talking, and I think that perhaps that really hasn't happened. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not sure if this conversation has happened because we don't necessarily, or haven't necessarily understood what each can give and bring to the table. And you know, to echo the previous session, it's so important to recognize that this industry brings value to our economy. It creates jobs. It, you know, it improves the welfare of our people, and for that reason alone, we should be supporting each other. So I'm going to end there and take questions if there are any. Please feel free to, you know, ask me anything except whether this current government is going to fall in the next 2 months. Oh, only because I don't know. So I've done my job. I've spoken for under 18 minutes, as the people from TED Talks told me to. They said, you know, keep it under 18 minutes. That's the way you hold your audience. I don't know how the questions are going to come. I believe there's a Slido function, and of course, if you put up your hand, somebody will come to you with a mic. I've been speaking very slowly in order to stretch the time out. It's me and Calypso kind of thing, you know, 7 years past. I don't know if you all know, but, you know, he stayed with Cersei for many years. In fact, had 3 children with not shown in the film, not the Christopher Nolan version of The Tale. But let's not get into that, because I think too much ink has been spilled on the Odyssey, at least Christopher Nolan's Odyssey. Are there any questions? Anything that you think you need to know? Perhaps there was a bit of false advertising. It may be a title better suited for somebody from the advertising industry, somebody from marketing who can tell you how to tell a story that will get people to come. How do you tell a story that will help you pitch Kuala Lumpur or Penang as a venue for conferences and exhibitions?
I'll quickly interject, just to remind everyone that yes, we do have the QR code that's being flashed right now. So if you'd like to scan it and submit your questions, we'll then be able to flash your questions up on the screen for Sharaad. But alternatively, old school style, you can raise your hand.
Unconsciously to promote a destination. Is there a study on this?
I'm not sure there's a study, but there's actually quite a bit of research in tourism and city branding, and it's probably a well-developed field. But in an interview I did many years ago with such a researcher, right, we talked about the kind of cities that have now become venues for arts festivals. And his whole argument to me was that it is the secondary city. It's not the big city, because things get drowned out. What you want for a festival is to have a city of a certain scale that allows your festival to pop. So it has to be visible within the city. It has to be something that people can immediately identify. So a city like Georgetown, because of UNESCO heritage status and because of preservation of so much of that history, is itself something that people will come for, right? So the literary festival, the sessions, meeting your favorite author is one thing, but just walking around the city is itself enticing. It is a journey, and because Penang is very clever about telling its story, as Ipoh now I think has emerged also as a city wanting to tell its story. I don't believe Ipoh has had many big events yet, but you can see why it would, right? There's the central part of Ipoh, the heritage buildings. These are things people want. I mean, whatever you might say about our colonial past, the one thing that we can be grateful for is some beautiful built heritage, and city design that makes it very human scale. So I think the idea of branding a city, of course we all know the Malaysia, truly Asia, kind of tagline. It's something that irritates people that I meet around the world, I mean in Asia, who say, how dare you claim to be all of Asia? I say, well, look at our tropical fruits. I mean, there are many ways to defend that, but it was so powerful. It's something I keep hearing again and again. So working with a very clever marketing strategy for the country, for the city. Maybe the country is a bit more difficult to sell, but if you look at, say, the Rainforest Festival in Kuching, it's putting Kuching on the map. It's a reminder of Kuching's heritage and its location in this gorgeous tropical forest. But journalists like myself, we don't think of those things, right? We talk about corruption and logging and indigenous people being displaced. Very important stories to tell too. I think we can't see it as a kind of zero-sum game. You only tell the positive stories, you don't tell the stories that that cast a shadow on that city. But at the same time, there is so much of value, and maybe for people in the industry is to work with the right kind of media, right? Recognizing that not all media can do what you need it to do, to tell the positive stories, to tell stories about cultural depth, and that's what that's all what people are looking for, right? They don't just want to be bussed around and have somebody speak in a mic to them while they look out the window. They want to experience things, and that, I think, the idea of the experience economy is something to take to heart. I think, if you do a quick search on that, they have things like some of the buzzwords: emotional resonance, sensory storytelling, interactive engagement. These are the ways in which you sell a place, right? So you come for the conference for the substantive part of the event that but in the evening you can walk out and you can walk into a district that's vibrant and full of life. It's got cafes and cuisines, and it's got some, some famous chefs, somebody who's been talking about it, something you saw on Instagram. Not all of it, I think, can be manufactured. It's tough to do that, but certainly can be encouraged, and you can kind of find ways in which to, boost it. Does that answer your question? Thank you so much for the question.
Well, Sharaad, we've got actually 3 questions up here. So perhaps we'll address the first one. How do you balance authenticity with strategic messaging when you tell a story?
I think, I don't know if there's an answer as such, but in the question there, you pose a very important issue, right, of authenticity. And this is where I come back to the basic point about, the power to convene, the trust. So authentic stories speak to not just what is being told, but also the teller, right? You believe that this person is not just paid to say this is a great city. And so if you look at Malacca, correct me if I'm wrong, but Fan Bingbing, right, was asked to be ambassador. I don't know if she was paid, but the returns on something like that is huge. Only because people trust her. I don't know if she can't be bought or whatever, but the important thing is she's a trusted figure within the social media space. And we see this also, I think, in recognizing new consumption habits and new tendencies that people have. So if, and I believe this was something that happened in Chiang Mai, television series had a scene at Chiang Mai University in Thailand, northern Thailand, and it was just the background for the scene. The fan base wanted to visit Chiang Mai University, not to get a degree or go on a summer course. They really just wanted to be there. And this impulse in people to want to associate with spaces, to take a picture, these things are real in the way in which people are motivated. I would, my younger self would turn my nose up at things like people going to museums and taking photographs, selfies, right? With the Mona Lisa behind. You think, no, you should be looking at the Mona Lisa and just having this engagement with this piece of art history. But actually people have moved away from that. I mean, they find their entry point into different experiences. It's tapping into those things that I think would be valuable for the industry, understanding how people think about cities, how they think about the experiences they want, what is it they want to feel when they come and travel far for an exhibition or a conference. That might be the way to kind of find a balance, right? Not to pander, but to find a balance.
Right. Unfortunately, Sharaad, that's all the time that we do have. However, let's give another big round of applause for Sharaad Kuttan, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much for listening to me and not walking off.
Thank you so much for your questions, and I'm sure if Sharaad is still around, he'll be delighted to continue to mingle during the break after this. But what a powerful session indeed. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I did. Ladies and gentlemen, we still have more to come before the lunch break, however. So welcome back from track 2 and 3. If you're just rejoining us, you've reached just in time as we're about to continue on with our next panel discussion. So let's take a moment to explore and to find out